You're listening to Your Words Unleashed podcast with host Dr. Leslie Wong, helping women scholars master their writing habits and publish a book that matters. Hey there, listeners. Today I'm going to talk about all the things you don't know about academia until you've left. But before I get to that, I want to introduce a new coaching offering to you that I'm really excited about. So I usually take clients on for a long-term basis, and we typically work together for 6 months or more. And in fact, some of my awesome authors have been working with me for over 2 consecutive years now and won't stop until their manuscript is in press. And I also have career coaching clients who've worked with me for just as long. But every so often, I get an inquiry from someone asking if I'm able to just give feedback on their book proposal. I've always had to say no because of my long-term coaching packages. But not anymore, because I've created something called Get It Published Strategy Sessions. These are individual 60-minute Zoom sessions that will help you strengthen your book proposal to finally get it off your desk and into the hands of publishers. I will assess your draft using the 4 developmental editing criteria of argument, evidence, structure, and style. And during our session, we will discuss your proposal in depth. I will provide thorough oral and written feedback that lets you know what's working and what's not, as well as give you strategies to fix any problems. By the end, your larger take-home points and implications will be crystal clear. We can discuss your publishing strategy, including which presses are most suitable for your manuscript and how and when to approach acquisitions editors. There's also time to address other writing-related obstacles like procrastination, feeling like an imposter, perfectionism, and lack of motivation. So if you feel like you've been spinning your wheels on your proposal or you just don't know if it works or not, a Get It Published session could be exactly what you need. I expect to have room for a maximum of 1 of these sessions per month. So to learn more, please go to my website at yourwordsunleashed.com/strategy. Okay, so today's episode is all about the perspective you can only gain about academia and higher education once you've actually left. I've been out now for more than 3 years, and yet I find myself still actively processing my feelings about leaving all the time. I generally don't like calling academia a cult, like some folks do. To me, it just seems insulting of the intelligence and critical thinking skills of the many wonderful people in it. But I think it's got a lot of parallels to other very structured organizations, like certain religions or the military that have their own defined norms and hierarchies that are really different from outside society. And once you leave higher ed and those things don't apply to you anymore, it's disconcerting. And whether you like it or not, you are launched onto a quest to figure out who you really are as a person and what you actually stand for. I was an academic for my entire adult life, as I'm sure many of you were or are as well. And it was like a long-term relationship that I tried so hard to make work but ultimately could not. We had irreconcilable differences, as it were. And the clash between our very, very different core values left me constantly feeling a mixture of dread, depletion, and defeat. And it just wasn't worth it to me to keep living that way. But because of the length of time I spent on this path, it's not clear sometimes whether my existing habits are actually my own or if they were instilled in me through the academy. I was reflecting on this the other day when I realized that I no longer overwork. I actually don't. When I first started my business, I tried to fit work into every spare moment of my life. I was still a faculty member, so I was working 2 jobs. I would coach at night or on weekends. I would get up at 5 a.m. to pack in a bit more before my son woke up. And since he was a toddler at the time, I had to be prepared because you never knew when an illness would sweep through and cost me several workdays. Now that he's older, he doesn't get sick nearly as much, thank God. But his kindergarten hours are shorter than his preschool ones, so once again, I have less time to work. And I'm still prioritizing diet and exercise, which cuts into work even more. And what I realized was that all of this is truly okay with me. It was actually kind of a shock to notice that I don't feel like I always need to be working and producing and hustling anymore. And when I'm not working, I generally don't feel guilty and I don't feel like I'm falling behind. And since I run my own business, this is completely due to a shift in my mindset because it's actually incredibly easy for solopreneurs to feel like they are not doing enough. I think it's actually the default mode. I'm no longer comparing myself to others very much. I can't say it never happens, but it really helps that I'm no longer existing in a hyper-competitive environment that's ruled by scarcity. There are a ton of folks out there who also do writing and career coaching and developmental editing for academics. And yet I feel like there's enough for everyone because the need is so great and we are all so different. So this got me curious about what other folks have learned about themselves or the ways their lives have changed since they left academia. I'm going to tell you the top 8 things they said. You might be surprised. You can find the full transcript at yourwordsunleashed.com/94. So I've mentioned the Professor is Out Facebook group a number of times on this podcast. It has 35,000 members now that include both current and former academics. And I think I was probably one of the first 100 members to join when it started in 2022. Although I'm a lot less active in the group now, I still find it to be a highly useful, supportive, and non-judgmental space. And like I mentioned, after noticing the change in my own habits and mindset, I decided to post the following question to the group. For those of you who have been out of academia for a year or more, what insights have you had about yourself, others, and academia/higher ed that you would never know unless you left? And there were almost 100 thoughtful and thought-provoking responses. The researcher in me couldn't pass up the opportunity to summarize the main themes alongside some corresponding quotes. And I posted that to LinkedIn where it circulated widely and people have added additional interesting perspectives. So now I'll give you the top 8 themes and some of the best quotes from this post. And FYI, these are not presented in any particular order. They are all important. So the first theme is that freedom in academia is an illusion. And here's what 2 people had to say. Person 1 said, I have been out almost 4 years now and found out that while a 9-to-5 job seemed too restrictive, I now love it. I go to work and then leave, and my work for the day is done. No work after I leave. And vacations are actually vacations. No need to constantly check email or work on research. Person 2 said, I was scared I would be chained to a desk 9 to 5, but I actually have more flexibility now because I work remotely with a team that crosses timelines, so we all set our own schedules. I go to the gym in the middle of the day, I can volunteer at my kids' school, and I am home every night for dinner. So I actually talked about this one in episode 51, Leaving Academia number 3, What Keeps People Stuck. And in that episode, I talked about the top 5 beliefs academics have about themselves and their work that makes it hard to leave. And number 1 on that list was that academic jobs are immensely flexible. And here's what I said on that episode. The first belief is often lauded as the biggest benefit to being an academic, and it is that academic jobs are immensely flexible. The idea is that you can work whenever you want and set your own hours in ways that are impossible in typical 9-to-5 jobs. You can drop off and pick your kids up from school and take them to medical appointments. You can teach from home or show students a movie when you're traveling to a conference. I know you've heard it, and it's invoked all the time as a primary reason to stay in the academy. However, I think there is a flexibility fallacy going on here that benefits higher ed institutions far more than workers. Framing research and teaching as a calling promotes a culture of overwork that's justified as providing service to others. When it's about helping others, this eliminates the need for workers to place any mental, physical, or time-based boundaries around their work. People who do so may be thought of as less committed. And although people may have flexibility in their schedules, they also often end up working at night or on weekends to make up for it. In my opinion, academics carry so much mental and emotional tension about their work that it completely counteracts the benefits that a flexible schedule is supposed to bring. Okay, so the second theme is that outside academia, people are generally much more appreciative, supportive, and collaborative in the workplace. Here's what 4 different people said about this. Person 1 wrote, "The sink or swim approach academia as a whole takes to those who choose it as a career path feels like hazing in retrospect. It's so different working for an organization where everyone's work is needed to accomplish shared goals." Person 2 said, "People outside academia appreciate hardworking people and don't sneer at them or try to tear them down." Person 3 said, "The biggest thing I learned is that academia, especially my field of social work, masquerades as promoting social justice and ethics, when in reality it is just as cutthroat, hierarchical, backstabbing, and toxic as corporate America, maybe even more so." And person 4 said, "I knew academia was abusive and toxic, but I didn't realize how bad it really was until I left. Now, instead of harsh criticism and gaslighting, I receive helpful feedback and support, and recognition for what I consider small efforts." So theme number 3 is really important for folks who are on the fence about leaving, which is that people were afraid they were going to miss academia, but they don't. One person wrote, "I had all this anticipatory grief. Everyone seems so worried they'll regret leaving academia. But then when you do, you realize it was just a job and the institution as a whole doesn't care." And another said, "What I know now that I couldn't have known then is that I simply don't miss academia at all. I expected to, I don't." And this leads into theme number 4, which is that many people's friendships with other academics seriously shifted after leaving. One person wrote, "Most of the people who claimed to be my friends were really just coworkers." Another shared, "Only 1 or 2 people out of several colleagues I knew and thought of as friends for 5, 10, 15, 20 years stayed in touch with me and cared to continue our friendship." So I myself have gone through my own grief about the loss of decades-long relationships that I had built with other academics. When you don't have that identity and title in common anymore, what may have been incredibly solid ties just naturally weaken. You no longer see people at conferences, or at least I don't. I absolutely detest large conferences. And when you're not invested in the mission of higher education as an insider, and you no longer have the same goals or struggles or lifestyle, your relationships will fundamentally shift. And in my case, there's been no animosity. It's just as if I was living on one island and I moved to another one where people speak a different language. The proximity to folks on the first island changes and you stop being able to communicate in the same ways. The foundation of your relationships can crumble, and this can be really unexpected. Now, this is certainly not a good enough reason to stay, but be forewarned that many people do undergo a major loss of community when they leave. So, number 5 is that outside of academia, organizations don't expect you to do uncompensated labor. From unpaid journal reviews, to unpaid tenure reviews, to unpaid mentorship of students, to unpaid service obligations, the list goes on and on and on. It reminds me of when I was a Girl Scout and we had to sell cookies every year, but none of that money came back to the troop. Where did it go? To the organization, of course, which had absolutely no transparency about its finances. Sounds familiar. And let me tell you, once you're out, this is completely not okay. As one person wrote, academia is exploitative AF. It's wild how much unpaid labor you're expected to take on. Other folks noted that when they travel, their companies pay for the entire trip and not just a portion of it. So theme number 6 is that people have been pleasantly surprised to learn that the work they do outside the academy is actually more interesting. One person wrote, "I thought I would go insane with the type of work you do in a 9-to-5, but it was actually a lot more stimulating and less repetitive than teaching the same classes over and over." And I've also found this to be true. One of the most liberating things about my work is that I'm no longer confined to sociology. I work with folks from an incredibly wide range of disciplines at totally different stages of their careers. And this really satisfies my inner curious child that wants to learn about everything. My work allows me to connect with people, places, and topics that I would never come into contact with or have time to think about if I was still a faculty member. And importantly, I get paid to do this. So theme number 7 is kind of a culmination of these different reflections I've just given, which is that many people realize they should have left years ago. As one person wrote, "I think the feeling I have the most is nothing that I was scared about came true. I was scared I would miss academia, but I don't. I was scared I would find the work boring or tedious, but it is exciting and challenging, and I think I know more about my field now than I did as a prof. I was scared I would be chained to a desk 9 to 5, but I actually have more flexibility now. All this for twice the salary? My only regret is not doing this years ago." And now we get to the 8th and final theme. A lot of people mention how much their health has improved from not being besieged by constant stress. One person said, "At 1 month out from leaving, my doctor told me that my blood pressure, blood sugar, A1C, and cholesterol had all gone back to target ranges. 5 months previous, I was in the ER with dangerous blood pressure, and they were running stroke protocol." Person 2 said, "I no longer require prescription sleep medicine every single night, year after year, or anti-anxiety medication." And another, "I didn't know how badly my health had deteriorated under the constant stress of academia. 2 years out, turns out my health issues were not normal aging, but directly associated with stress. I lost 40 pounds, have time and peace of mind to be present for my kids, have time and money for self-care, and enjoy cooking again." So I've shared before about how many academics I knew suffered from long-term stress-based illnesses. There can be very serious mental and physical consequences from being immersed in a pressure cooker environment. And if you're going to make this path sustainable, you need to figure out how to put your own needs first again and again and again. And just a reminder that I help people do this all the time with my Career Reset program, which you can find out more about at yourwordsunleashed.com/career reset. So let's sum everything up. I've given you the top 8 themes that emerged from a small-scale survey I did of folks who've transitioned out of the academy. There's no need to repeat them. I think you get the gist. And obviously, this is a self-selected sample. But it's notable that no one expressed regret for having left. It's also interesting to me that earning more money did not come up as a major theme in its own right. When people mentioned it, it was more like an additional perk. For example, one person wrote, "I have so much more of my life back. I miss the students and my colleagues, but I have evenings and weekends to myself, the flexibility to travel any time of year, and I've almost doubled my income." I mean, this could speak to academics' complicated feelings about money that I won't go into here, but it counters the commonly repeated notion that equates leaving academia with selling out. So all of this is just to provide some food for thought for any of you who might be wondering whether this path and the related sacrifices are worth it to you. If you need help figuring this out, reach out to me. I'm always here. Take care until next time. Thanks for tuning in to Your Words Unleashed podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other writers or leave a rating and review. To find the full transcript and catch all the latest from me, check out my website, yourwordsunleashed.com. I'll talk to you next time. Happy writing!